Why is there no church on Church Street? Hi folks, Robert Lowell Goller here. Thank you for joining me for our weekly chats about local history. I've written about this topic before, I've talked about it in videos, but I got a couple questions during some recent talks about why there's no church on Church Street and how the street got its name. There has not been a church on Church Street since 1891, but the reason it's called Church Street is because, in fact, the Presbyterian Church was located right here on the corner behind me until 1891. It was a giant church relative to the rest of the streetscape. So back in those days, in the 1800s, we didn't have official names for streets, and there wouldn't have been a sign on the street like there is one right behind me. So what you would have said is, if you were giving someone directions, you would say, go down there to the street next to the church, to the Church Street. And people would know exactly what you were talking about because the giant church was located there, and it was hard to miss. So the roads kind of got their names based off of landmarks there. Elm Street had a large elm tree at the end of it, and so you would say to folks, go to the Elm Street, the street next to the elm tree. And in fact, here it would have been go to the Church Street, go to the street next to the giant church. So that's how it's got its name. The Presbyterian Church was located here. They decided to move in the 1890s to their present location. They've had a couple buildings due to fire on Payne Street. And so the building here, the church on Church Street, became a music hall for a couple years before they actually put it on rollers and moved it down here and placed it on further down onto Church Street. So the church remained there for a few years before then it was taken down. And the church at the corner here was replaced by the Opera House, which I had talked about before, and I'll talk about in a video coming up. But the church was moved in order to make way for the Opera House. They didn't change the road to Opera House Street. They kept it as Church Street. And then, of course, as we got into the 20th century and they started officially naming roads, designating names for roads, it just kept its name Church Street. So that is why we still have a church street without a church. And that it was moved in May of 1893 to make room for the Opera House. And the Easter Advertiser interestingly said, and I'll just quote, it says, "The old church has taken a place in the background, in the shadow of the Opera House," because the Opera House overshadowed it because the Opera House was so big. And again, the church moved down, and then after a few years it was taken down. So that's why we still call it Church Street, even though there is no church. So that answers the question as to why we have a Church Street without a church, and there's no church on Church Street.